basically that song is about imagine a life without fear. That's kind of what we've been talking about and singing about and beeping about this morning. It's outside. Imagine a life without fear. You know, a lot has happened this particular week that has kind of stirred up that feeling of fear that we have. We've had fires and shootings and political distress and unsettledness, and there have been floods, and there's been international incidents, and you know, just lots of things that bring fear up in all of us. And it's so interesting that our theme for Centers for Spiritual Living this month is about releasing fear and error thinking. So centers all over the world, there are about 400 centers just like this one all over the world, and we're all talking about together in different forms of talks about how to release fear. And I want to start with the idea that our lives improve when we let go of fear and give ourselves freedom from it. You know, right now we are experiencing many decisions being made that are based on fear. You know, and they're motivated by fear. So once you've made the transition in your life away from making all your decisions based on fear, it kind of becomes disorienting when you watch other people really making so many decisions based on fear. And I know that all of us are on a quest to free ourselves from all fear. You know, we come together here in spiritual community to help encourage each other to break free from the bondage of fear, from the thoughts of fear, and help each other turn towards the light. And instead of being pushed by fear, being motivated by love. Ernest Holmes said this: if you are filled with fear, refill yourself with faith, for faith always overcomes fear. It's as light always overcomes darkness, faith and love always overcome fear. So the lesson today is releasing fear, and we're going to look at 3 little itty bitty fears that I will invite you to release. One is the fear of God, one is the fear of others, and the third itty bitty fear is the fear of death. Okay? So let's start with the first one, the fear of God. Not so small, right? So how many of you were taught? How many of you were taught about a God that was something to fear? Yeah, right? A God that was watching over everything you did at any moment, just ready to punish you for the things that you did and said. A God that kind of watched for sin and judged everything. You know, or perhaps you grew up with the idea that if things went kind of sideways in your life, that God was somehow aware of a transgression and was punishing for you, punishing you for it. You know, this belief is one of the most common ways of thinking that the science of life philosophy helped me free myself from. The idea of God is a construct that is very sticky in our unconscious mind. And it probably is so sticky because it was put there very young in this lifetime, or perhaps even in former lifetimes, this construct of God. So I was taught about a God that reflected my father's understanding of life. You know, my father believed that human beings were flawed and doomed and unworthy. That's kind of the traditional fundamentalist Christian way of looking at life. You know, sin was inevitable, and groveling for forgiveness was basically the way to kind of climb out of that. The only way to salvation and redemption, right? But even then, God would punish me now or in the afterlife if I didn't behave well, right? So the God of my father's understanding disapproved of all the people that my father didn't understand. Okay? So the God that I was taught about that my father didn't understand were people were like loose and permissive lifestyles, or people who express sexuality or gender fluidity, or people of other religions or nationalities. That was my father didn't understand all of that. So anything my father feared, God seemed to judge as bad and unworthy. And he also taught that we, as blessed chosen ones, were agents of God, and we should also judge and condemn other people for whatever was going on, right? So self-righteousness and judgment of others just kind of left my heart broken. It just left me broken. And it also left me with a deep sense of shame in myself for being so unworthy and broken. So to get away from these feelings, I just kind of got away from God altogether, got away from religion altogether. I tried to disempower this idea of God in my mind. So can you relate to that? I know I'm not alone. I know here in the room today, I know there are a lot of people who've healed a similar God wound or are trying to heal it right now. Matter of fact, if you're like me, you have probably spent most of your adult life trying to heal that. And here we are trying to seek a new thought, a new path, a new perspective on some very, very old ideas. See, what I learned as I've studied world religions and actually just kind of watching life in general is that it's your understanding of God that's a projection of your beliefs and your beliefs and how life works. Your worldview becomes your understanding of God. It reflects whether you believe in the power of love or the power of fear, whether you believe in chaos or you believe in order. So if you tell me about your understanding of God, you're actually telling me a lot about how you understand life as a whole. So how do we release our fear of God, our avoidance of God, or the old thoughts we have about God? I believe that the first step we have to take is to look at some of those habitual thoughts and recognize how we got them in the first place. We were taught them. We were taught them by some of the most trusted people in our lives, our parents and our family members, our spiritual leaders and our teachers. We were taught them. And unpacking all of those beliefs requires us to look at the thoughts that we've accepted as our own and have been thinking since we were very, very young. So for me, this philosophy has helped me to re-examine my thoughts and beliefs about many, many topics. Began spending years questioning and examining my habitual thoughts and replacing most of them with a higher truth that better reflects my own understanding of life. See, I had to start with the definition. It started with the definition, my understanding of what God is and what my relationship is with this higher power. I had to give the concept of God like a new meaning, replacing the meaning that it was given to me as a child. So by studying the science of mind, which is this philosophy, and Ernest wrote this philosophy after he studied all the major religions, he studied science, he studied philosophy, and he realized that the thread of all of it is that the scientific truth is that everything is made up of the same thing. Everything is made up of energy. So I began to see that this energy is responsive. And it's an expression of life, all life, my life, your life. This energy is called by many names, including God, but also Allah, or the Supreme Consciousness, or life, and light, and love. It's called lots of things, but it's always talking about that energy. And that energy is what every religion, every philosophy, and every scientist is describing and exploring. Religion uses the language of the times and of the people that wrote the books or whatever, but they tell stories that relate this energy to what's going on in life and the relationship that we have with it. When we live in alignment, the stories tell us, when we live in alignment with the energy of life, then our experiences go well. And when we live out of alignment with the energy of life, things can get kind of tough, right? Alignment is heaven, and misalignment is hellish. Therefore, we need not fear God, because we do not fear energy. We respect it. We respect energy. We work with energy. We use energy, and energy flows through us. But there's nothing in God that desires to punish us, just as there is nothing in energy that desires to punish us. It's a neutral thing. We may make so-called mistakes, but we experience the natural consequences of those mistakes and misalignments with the energy. Our journey is to learn and grow from those misalignments. Just like you're working with electricity. If you get out of alignment with electricity, there's going to be a consequence. But the electricity is not plotting how to get you, right? So releasing our fear of God carries tremendous healing. And it starts with that fresh understanding of what God is. So I invite you to question everything you were taught about God and make a fresh decision about what your relationship is with the energy that we call God. The energy of love itself, quite the opposite of fear. Okay, so I've tackled that itty-bitty fear. So what about releasing that second fear, the fear of others? So much of our erroneous thinking is about the other people who inhabit this gorgeous planet that we live on, right? So we either love other people or we fear other people. And see, we spend so much of our lives trying to figure out whether or not we are safe. It's exhausting to examine each individual, get to know them, figure out who they are, what's going on with them, understand their motivations and possible actions, and then decide if we're safe with them or not, right? It would take too long to assess this room of people, much less the whole world. It would take way too much time. So we take the lazy way out. We just group people together and we make our decisions in mass, right? Perhaps you say, okay, everyone who looks like me is okay. Everyone who lives the way I live is okay. Everyone who votes like me, okay. Everyone who prays like me is okay. Everyone who loves like me is okay. Everyone who has a similar home as I do is okay. Everyone who has my moral compass is okay. Everyone who drives like me, just like me, exactly like me, is okay. And everyone who doesn't, in all those categories, isn't okay at all. And those people who aren't okay are less than me. They are unpredictable, they are capable of bad things, and they deserve less than me. I am the judge of the people who cross my path, and I must keep myself safe. So I'm either a little bit afraid or downright terrified of certain people. And I know you might be thinking, well, that certainly doesn't describe me, Laine. I've done my work. Laine has totally nailed the other people around, but not me. Stop, look deeper, look deeper. We are all healing fear of others. And these fears are subversive, and our ego hides them from us. They hide those, the ego hides the fears from our highest self, because if the ego can deny their existence, we don't have to heal them. You know, some of my early jobs coming out of college gave me the opportunity to interact with groups of people that people tend to fear, right? Tend to judge and fear. So I studied counseling and social work. Okay, so that path often leads you into some interesting populations. So here are some of them that I work closely with. I work closely with imprisoned felons, including death row inmates. I worked with the mentally ill who were incarcerated or hospitalized, so very dysfunctional at the moment. I worked with the abject poor. I worked with men with AIDS in the mid to late 80s, a very scary population. I worked with the angry and creative youth who had tattoos and mohawks, and they just enjoyed rebellion, and they kind of created chaos in public places. I also worked with some of the wealthiest and and most powerful business leaders in the country. And I'm so grateful for the kaleidoscope of people in my career that I interacted with, because it taught me we're actually all the same. When I arrived first on the scene with every group that I just mentioned, I was terrified. My friends thought I was crazy to be in some of those situations, right? I was afraid for my life sometimes, for my safety. And I was afraid I wouldn't be able to relate to them, and they wouldn't be able to relate to me. They would judge me or shame me in some way. They'd smell my weakness, right? But as the weeks and months went by, I experienced unity, yes, even with death row inmates. I experienced unity with them because we all have the same potential for greatness, and we all have the same potential for darkness. And wherever we are in life, it's a result of a zillion choices that we made along the way to get us there. So we each have great freedom to release others from our need to judge them. If we can remember that everyone is living in relationship with the energy I talked about, then we can release our fear of them, because the energy is going to take care of that. The law of cause and effect is going to take care of their choices or whatever. If they are living in alignment with the energy, their lives will bless them. If they're living in misalignment, we need not worry about them, because the energy laws will deliver to them the consequences of their choices. Here's what Ernest Holmes says. He says, "There is no sin but a mistake, and no punishment but an inevitable consequence. There is an immutable law of cause and effect running through everything. We're not punished for our sins, but by them. Sin is its own punishment, and righteousness its own reward." So this teaching truly allows me to step back and invite everyone to just show up as they are. I trust that they're just like me. They're either showing up to love me, or they're showing up to show me where I'm in disconnection with my energy. But Laine, what if the person's gonna kill me? Let's look at that little bitty fear, that last fear that I invite you to release, the fear of death. You know, I touched on this just a tiny bit last week in one of the questions and answers. Death, the biggest fear of them all. I call it the Mama Jama fear, right? Some people can argue at this point. They say things like, "Well, Laine, I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid of getting hurt as I die." Right? Yeah, I think it's basically the same fear. But here's the truth. These magic suits are downright fragile. They're marvelous in lots of ways, aren't they? But they're very fragile. They're not very sturdy vehicles sometimes. They can only survive in a very small temperature range. They don't have the strong exoskeleton to protect the inner soft parts too good, right? All of the organs have to function perfectly in unison for things to turn out okay. Basically, there are lots of ways for environmental things to get in to our magic suits and just wreak havoc. And even if everything goes swimmingly, the shelf life for these is about 80 years, give or take 20. The truth is, we are temporarily in this particular magic suit. It's the truth. So releasing the fear of death is all about a case of mistaken identity. We are both human beings and spiritual beings. The human part is temporary, and the spiritual part of us is eternal, because the spiritual part of us is energy. And energy is forever connected to the source of all energy. So if you are 100% or even mostly identified with your magic suit, with your personality, with your ego, you're going to be afraid of death. Because guess what? Death kind of brings all that stuff to a screeching halt, right? It's kind of like when the robot's battery runs out, it kind of goes, right? The whole thing slumps over without energy. To our human self, anything and anyone who threatens that must be destroyed before we are destroyed. Fear of death actually causes much of the fear of others, and for that matter, fear of God too, right? However, if you're predominantly identified with your spiritual self, your energy self, your soul, so to speak, there is no death to fear. Because energy cannot be destroyed. It simply waits to take another form, or it exists in possibility until expressed. And it is true that there's this great unknown out there, a great mystery about what happens to us, what happens to the soul or the individualized energy after it exits the magic suit. But the more we explore the energy of life, the more we relate to it, the more we relate to God, the less we fear our return to the energy as we leave this current expression and go into that unknown. So if we go back to that first quote about Holmes, about faith, and its power to replace fear, we can face the unknown that death symbolizes better. And that's why you're here with me today, to feed your faith, to remember who you truly are. So those are the three fears that are not serving you and that are the root of so much human pain. If you study this teaching, you can release yourself from these fears and launch yourself into greater love. We come together to challenge and heal these fears. In this community, we deeply experience the love of God. We embrace an understanding that the energy that we call God is the energy we invite to flow through us and express. It's the energy that we are. She's not bothering me, just so you know. In this community, we deeply experience the love of others and the love of that child. We celebrate diversity and we embrace all who cross our path. We understand the energy of God is the light in each person's eyes. And in this community, we deeply love the mystery. We love the unknown and encourage each other to let go of that fear and identify ourselves as eternal beings on the path of evolving throughout this life. So while we are here, let's choose love and not fear. Can we pray together for a minute? Love. I breathe in love. I breathe in and recognize the connection that we all have. The energy that flows through my breath, through my word, through my life, and through the life of each one here. And I welcome an opening to an understanding of any fear that pops up for me throughout the day. What am I not loving in that moment? What do I have the opportunity to explore and lean into? Who is the other that is showing up for me to love? And how can I extend that energetic opening and hello, that welcoming? So I invite the sweet spirit to shine its light on any place of darkness in my heart and in the heart of anyone here, knowing that love is all there is once it is expressed. I'm so thankful for each one here. I'm thankful for the love that we share in this community. And so it is.